Enjoy. There's a talking cat companion and witches, because remember Kiki's delivery service? There's a young girl forced to work extremely hard for a mean old boss lady, cause don't you love Spirited Away? Oh look, they gotta make breakfast and have breakfast together and bond as a family, and the demons help with their breakfast. Because yes, I also watched Howl's Moving Castle. While disguised a writer, I guess we needed a dash of Whisper of the Heart too. Sure, why not? Throughout this entire Ghibli ranking, I never once felt like any of their films were copying their previous ones, until we got to this dumpster fire. At least Cars 2 didn't blatantly copy what came before it. At least it had good looking animation. At least it actually finished its story. This movie abruptly ends out of nowhere, with none of the character conflicts actually resolved. Earwig successfully kerpranks the witch lady and gets both her and the Mandrake absolutely furious at her, with only 20 minutes left in the movie. She then goes into the Mandrake's private quarters without permission, finds out they were in a band with her mom, and now the Mandrake suddenly likes her. And so does the witch, who literally has not said a kind thing to her once throughout this entire movie. So as you can tell, the background characters look real bad, and the main characters are not only ugly, but incapable of emoting naturally. They're definitely not wooden. Oh no, quite the contrary. They're way too expressive given how bad the actual design of the faces really are. Seeing this emotion is like watching puppies drown or Santa Claus getting shot. It ruins the magic of animation and it makes me long for the sweet release of death. Madagascar is another DreamWorks movie with a lot of weird expressions. But the weird expressions work because they are intentionally weird for comedic effect. The timing is really good, and most importantly, the design of the characters isn't complete ass. So the weird expressions actually make the movie funnier. Weird expressions aren't used for comedic effect in Shark Tale. That's just how the characters naturally look. It sucks. So what have we learned so far? Pixar incorporates twists into their movies organically. They set them up ahead of time, they give the villains clear motivations, and they also give them a decent amount of time to be evil. Or they have another villain covering the evil quota for the first 2/3 of a movie. Disney, meanwhile, seems more concerned with shoving a twist villain into the movie without considering logic or character motivations.
That was his mistake.
Coraline marked the long-awaited return of Henry Selick to the director's chair of an animated movie. You may have heard of this movie he directed. It is called Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas. Thanks for that. Anyway, after making these two classics and a horrible, horrible flop that nobody remembers to the point where I didn't even know it existed until writing the script, Henry Selick returned with this horrifying yet magical delight of a movie, complete with excellent stop-motion animation and this guy who looks like a really tired Waluigi. It's beautiful. And then there's this big bosomed lady who's a mermaid, and this dude is made of rats, and the cat is Keith David, and I love it. It's so creative. Probably better than Nightmare Before Christmas. Do at me on that one too. This was the first movie from Laika, which has become a tour de force in the realm of stop-motion animation in recent years. Every movie they've made so far has gotten an Oscar nomination. How does it feel, Good Dinosaur? How does it feel? I mean, they're just giant hunks of plastic waiting to be thrown away. That's all a car is. Everything seems to be going well, and the main character's a frog now. Hey Disney, how about you stop turning people of color into animals? It's a really weird and gross trend. This studio did a ton of this decade, so I wanted to say that right off the bat. But like, in these other movies, it at least makes sense story-wise. Kuzco needs to be taught a lesson because he's a gigantic asshole. Kenai needs to be taught a lesson and be a brother bear to this kid. Later on, we got Pixar's Soul, and by being a cat, Joe learns a lesson about enjoying the small moments in his life. And in this movie, Naveen becoming a frog makes sense because he's very egotistical and needs to be taken down a peg. See, this trend that stunningly never happens to white people for some reason at least works for these specific characters and their arcs. Now, riddle me this, dear viewer. What the f*** did Tiana do to turn... What the f*** did Tiana do to deserve... What the f*** did Tiana do to... What the f*** did Tiana... What the f*** did Tiana... This is the hardest thing I've ever had to say. What the f*** did Tiana do to deserve turning into a frog? There are no surprises whatsoever, which is ironic since this movie has a motherfucking twist villain. Well, okay, maybe it's a good twist villain. No, it's honestly the worst twist villain I've ever seen in a feature film. Forget Mr. That Was His Mistake or Assistant Mayor Sheepdweeb. This movie's twist villain is on the same level as the Paul Blart Mall Cop twist villain. Oh, what a surprise. It's the racer that the snail idolized for so many years. Except he's really a bad guy who never once acts like a bad guy until the big reveal scene. Look me in the eye and tell me this movie isn't absolutely hysterical.
Is she dead? No. The concept of taking a subversive, raunchy middle finger to Disney and their brand of fairy tale musicals and converting it into a wannabe Disney musical on stage is such a gross misinterpretation of what Shrek represents. DreamWorks became the very thing they swore to destroy, ignoring the goals the original film was striving for once they realized it was their cash cow. Or golden goose is a more appropriate metaphor, I guess, since there was a golden goose in Puss in Boots. Fuck it, I don't care. Shrek the musical sucks. It has its moments here and there, and it's not as utterly worthless as Shrek the Third, but it's something I had a mostly miserable time revisiting, and something I never want to see again. I know this musical has its fans, and that's totally fine. Maybe you guys should sit this one out, because I have very little nice to say about this show. Normally I'd start one of these negative reviews off with said nice stuff, but with this, we really need to start off by discussing why this show fundamentally does not work as an adaptation of the movie Shrek. Let's go, I wanna die.
Ultimately, what holds Grimmel back from being amazing is that he's not really three-dimensional in any sense, and I kinda don't get his plan. Like, it pans out in the end, and he always seems to be aware of where the heroes are going, but why did he have to wait for Roughnut to lead them there if he already knew they were going west?
That was his—
Will you cut that out?
I don't know, he's kinda like Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi. Every part of his vague plan just kinda works out somehow.
Hello, what about me?
No, you're not in this episode.
And the best part about the fourth wall jokes is that not only do they keep coming at an insane rate, but they never get old or repetitive. Each one is hilarious in its own right. And even without the fourth wall breaks, this show is just the master of traditional jokes and setups. One of my favorite episodes is the Bruised Blue Naba, because it just has it all in terms of comedy. It's got an excellent fourth wall joke, as you'd expect from Chowder, where Chowder starts recapping the entire events of the episode for Gazpacho, only for Gazpacho to get fed up with how long it's taking and fast forward the episode himself.
Somebody fast forward, there's no time!
So that's great. There's a ton of other standout one-off jokes here and there as well, but I mainly adore the absurdity of the brick jokes in this episode. At one point, Chowder attempts to vanish into thin air in order to hide from Panini, but Mung tells him it won't work because women can smell fear. Then the joke comes back later when Gazpacho attempts to disappear, and Chowder relays the same information Mung told him. It's golden. Then there's this other part where Chowder is swinging his arms back and forth to prove a point, and he gets stuck doing the motion, only for Schnitzel to come in and fix it. That's a cute, funny moment, and it makes sense because this is the kitchen, and Schnitzel works in the kitchen. There is logic to this event happening. But then later on, Panini is rocking her head back and forth, and she gets stuck the same way, only for Schnitzel to show up again and fix it. This joke is so good because the second instance of it happening removes the aforementioned logic from the scenario. Schnitzel and Panini barely know each other, and there's no reason for Schnitzel to be in this marketplace right now.
Pull the lever, Kronk! Wait, what the? 24 frames of Nick? From the YouTube channel 24 Frames of Nick? Is that what that lever does? Why do we even have that lever?